I think this might be the single biggest piece of theme park news to hit the industry since I've been doing this. Cedar Fair and Six Flags just merged.
And they're all Six Flags now.
That is absolutely insane. There's so much to unpack here. We got a lot to discuss because I don't think anyone saw this coming.
No, and what's interesting is this is something that was talked about a couple of times in the past, and it was kind of like an in-passing thing, and nobody really took it that seriously.
Yeah, it was just like, oh, like Six Flags is trying to buy Cedar Fair, or vice versa, and then like, oh, one of them's now trying to acquire SeaWorld. They're all trying to buy each other,
yeah,
right?
and it would cause like a little like boom in the market for a second, because it was like, oh, will they, won't they? And then it was always kind of just like a...
It fizzles out. Yeah.
But not today.
No. So yesterday there were like rumors that this might be happening, and then earlier today, as of when we're recording this, the actual news broke that Six Flags and Cedar Fair are merging. But it's more of a true merge. Like it's almost a 50% split. Cedar Fair has about 51%, and then Six Flags is about 49%. The actual leadership isn't changing too much either. Richard Zimmerman, the CEO of Cedar Fair, is going to be CEO. Salim Basul, the CEO of Six Flags, is going to be the executive chairman of the board. And then the CFO from Cedar Fair is going to retain the same position for this entire company. And then there's 6 members of each of the boards of their respective companies come together to form the 12-person board for this new Six Flags.
So outside of like the finances and like the like very like businessy decisions, there hasn't been like much revealed about what this will mean for the actual parks themselves, like what they're going to look like for employees, for guests, as far as theming, ride acquisition, all these different things are like big question marks. So we're going to kind of talk through each of these things. And, we can look at like both sides of the coin. Like there might be big changes or there might be none. Like each park might retain their own identity, or maybe they'll try to come up with a collective kind of idea. So I don't know. Without further ado, let's get into this.
So I think the first thing that is on everyone's mind is the name. So the Cedar Fair name, as we know, is essentially going to dissolve into Six Flags. That is the overall name of this company. However, the actual stock is going to stay Fun, which was Cedar Fair's. But what has not been revealed is, will the names of the parks themselves change? Six Flags over Cedar Point, Six Flags Kings Island, Six Flags Kings Dominion. I don't know.
No,
right?
I can't accept that. And you know what? I'm trying not to be biased because like all of these changes, I'm like, I can't picture that. Therefore, it's not happening. But that's not real. Yeah. I have to accept that this is...
That is a very valid possibility. People give Six Flags flack, but like the one thing you gotta commend them for is branding. Everyone knows the Six Flags name. Yeah, exactly, right? In the enthusiast world, Six Flags sometimes comes with a connotation. But when you talk to any member of the general public, it really doesn't. Six Flags has a very positive spin. So it makes sense that they retain the Six Flags name over Cedar Fair. However, I personally do not anticipate them putting the Six Flags stamp on the Cedar Fair properties.
What about branding, though, around the park?
That I could see. Like, I even think about, like, the souvenir cups, right? How it will mention, like, the different Cedar Fair parks on it. I could see them mentioning, like, all the parks in their portfolio, which, if you're keeping track, that is 42 properties, including their water parks. But I even think about the Six Flags chain. You have La Ronde, Great Escape, Frontier City. These do not have the Six Flags name in front of the name. They will say, like, Great Escape, a Six Flags park. I could see it being set up that way.
A Six Flags park.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I think that is much more realistic, personally.
I think it's, at the end of the day, it's just going to take getting used to, so I apologize in advance for all my cringy facial expressions. Like, every time you talk, I go...
It's weird. It's a big change.
It's like too much for my brain right now.
I saw a comment. Someone said, this is the equivalent of like finding out your mom is marrying that guy you don't like.
So one thing that we should probably take into consideration here is that we just finished off the 2023 season, and the 2024 season is not too far away at this point. And both of these parks have had their respective sales and prices set for the 2024 season. So I don't think we're going to be seeing a collective pass that encompasses both companies' like parks
next year
until 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the press release they said that this is one of the big benefits with having all these parks is that you can offer a pass like that. So it seems like one day you're going to be able to buy a pass that gets you into Cedar Point as well as Magic Mountain, which is so like weird. Unheard of. That's insane.
I think we'll probably benefit in that way because if you add up the two prices of like how much you pay for all those parks like individually, and combine them, it's like too much.
Okay, so for reference, with my Six Flags membership, I get charged monthly. So it's not like a per year thing. However, if you were to combine it over a 12-month period, it comes out to be about $216 to get in entry as well as meals. No drinks though. So that's maybe $18 a month, something like that. Which I recognize that there are multiple tiers of passes that you can get, but just for simplicity's sake, that's the one that I have for this. And then Cedar Fair, let's say that you're paying about a little less than $400 if you want meals plus admission to all of their parks. Combine that together, you're looking at about a $600 value. So if you were...
It's like a universal annual pass. I just don't see them going that route.
Do they go, like for an all-encompassing pass, how much would you pay to get dining plus admission to all these properties? I feel like they would shoot for around a $500 range.
Yeah.
That, like, a little less than, like, what you would actually pay if you were to have them separate.
Is that including dining?
Sure, yeah, let's say that. It's tough to say. Obviously, there's going to be multiple tiers with everything. They're going to have to redo the structure, which for Six Flags, I just kind of feel bad for at this point.
I don't even know what...
That's like the third version in 2 years.
I don't even know what my pass is anymore.
I don't either.
I don't know, because at one point I was like platinum, diamond or something after like the pandemic, and now I'm like gold, and I don't have food anymore. I don't know what's going on.
It's really weird.
It's very weird.
I feel like they're going to want to have in some sort of system in place where like you can keep paying for the pass that you have if you want to. I feel like they would have maybe an additional option if you want all of these other parks.
Yeah, but the thing is, I feel like they can't keep it at where, I have a Cedar Fair park pass, so I only want to get into the Cedar Fair parks. I don't care about Six Flags. They're going to have to kick out the people who are grandfathered into their prices. They're just going to have to.
At some point, probably.
You know, because we mentioned dining plans, like how that is going to change, because right now they have very different structures.
Sure. Six Flags, you get a snack. Cedar Fair, you don't.
And overall, like the food quality at Cedar Fair is like worlds above that.
I think because now we're looking at this from an overall company perspective, Cedar Fair has been doing such a good job with food and beverage. I would be shocked if that doesn't carry over to Six Flags. So personally, I anticipate that in the long run, the food at Six Flags will improve.
My only thing is like, okay, they're merging together to like make and save more money, right? So people who go to Six Flags already like are not expecting like really nice food. So would they want to spend more to like improve that food? Because it's the Six Flags brand on it, like, and the people know it for having like just food.
I think the thing is you have to remember that we are having a true merge of leadership. So you are having now 6 members of that board plus the CEO who is coming from a company that has a very different mindset. I like to think that quality overall would improve, which I feel like leads us...
I do too. I hope so.
Yeah, like you kind of similar mindset into then the overall park appearance. Like for the most part, Cedar Fair parks tend to be a lot nicer than Six Flags parks. I realize there are exceptions in there. I'm curious to see how much that changes. I really hope that more of an effort is put into maybe like landscaping and overall TLC with some of these Six Flags parks. Because like Cedar Fair, I feel like has more of a quality over quantity mindset, and Six Flags can sometimes be the opposite. So
yeah, and I think that like Cedar Fair for the last few years has been shifting away from like just basic theming and more into immersion. Jungle Expedition is like a gold standard for them right now.
Sure.
When you go to like a Six Flags park, there's nothing like that. And it's like you go to like the DC areas and they have like some signs, but it's not immersion.
Which brings us into capital expenditures. That's going to be a big shift, I feel like. One of the biggest things that you have when you have competing chains is that you are constantly trying to one-up the other to make your park the best that it possibly can be. You know, you want to put in new investments, you want to update areas so that your guests are happier, but also like you're...
So they choose you.
Yeah, it's making a statement. It's saying like, come to our park because we just did this and it's
not that
amazing.
Way. Yeah.
And if you are now combining these companies, has that sense of competition gone away?
I think it'll definitely change, because like now those two brands aren't competing. I mean, they still have to compete with like, you know, in some areas you have SeaWorld parks, in some areas you're gonna have like Palace Entertainment parks that are within like a similar range of distance. But to me, like those are kind of on different levels. Their main competition was each other for people that are willing to spend within a certain price range, because a day ticket or a pass to those two parks is very different than like a SeaWorld Platinum.
Right, and here's the thing. We're talking about parks all across North America. So for some of these, there is no competition because you're in completely different demographics. But we do have a couple parks that are relatively close to each other. So I think about Kings Dominion and Six Flags America, Dorney Park and Great Adventure. Knott's and Magic Mountain is probably the biggest one, followed by California's Great America and Discovery Kingdom. Those are the main ones that come to my mind. We're not going to have to worry about some of those because you have other properties involved. You have to worry about Kingsman and Six Flags America have Busch Gardens and Hershey Park right there. Same with Dorney and Great Adventure. So like they still have to keep in mind, okay, we have to now one up what Hershey's doing and what Busch Gardens is doing.
Well, and you look at Knott's and Magic Mountain, and they've got Disneyland and Universal right there. Literally right there.
If they're using their brains, I feel like this would be a no-brainer for have like a Southern California pass. It's just like, hey, thrill seekers, you can get into Knott's and Magic Mountain for one ticket. That'd be fantastic. I'm sure that there'd be locals and tourists who would absolutely take advantage of that. The one market that I think is definitely going to have an impact for is Northern California. And that's because we already know California's Great America is going to close. But now that you have Discovery Kingdom in the same chain, why keep Great America open any longer?
Yeah.
Like,
oh, that's sad.
We know that they said 10 years for that park. I think that just got diminished drastically.
So it's not really a secret that like the mindset between each company is very different as far as adding new attractions. So if I were to describe Cedar Fair, I look at them as a little more on the safe side. Yeah. They like tried and true attractions. They've seen them in many different locations. They can go out and ride them, and they can be like, you know what, boom, let's go for it.
For the most part.
For the most part. Yeah. Then I look at Six Flags. Six Flags is a little bit more on like the daring side. So thanks to them, we have Rocky Mountain Construction. Yep. We have things like X2. Yep. They go for prototype rides. The free spins, like all of these things are rides that I don't think Cedar Fair would have ever gone with had they not been able to try them at Six Flags.
Absolutely.
So finding that balance between like being daring and like trying new things to one up like the competition versus like, hey, let's err on the side of caution and go with things that we know work.
Yeah. Now, I will say that Six Flags, as of maybe the past couple of years, specifically ever since Celine came in, I feel like Six Flags has been a little bit more in line with Cedar Fair.
More conservative.
They have been a bit more conservative. So, like, I feel like this would be a very different conversation if we were talking 5 years ago. How much of that carries over to the future? Do you now have to select even fewer from the pool of who gets a new ride? Like if Michigan's Adventure and Valley Fair and Six Flags St. Louis have all been neglected in the past, are they now going to get even more neglected?
I think so, because now they have so many flagship parks that they're going to be focusing on.
Yeah.
That I wonder like what the fate of like some of those smaller parks will be.
Yeah. The only thing that might be the saving grace here is that you are absolutely strengthening both of these companies by doing this. So something that they mentioned, the company as a whole is now going to be valued at about $8 billion, and that's including their debt. And there's a whole lot more stats you can read about in this press release. But the idea is that in this like economic downturn that you can keep both chains going and make them stronger because now you have more of a portfolio that you can pull from, especially from the year-round markets, as opposed to where Cedar Point is great and they make a lot of money, but they're only open 6 months.
While you're right that they have more money, like that's a lot to kind of coordinate and to figure out like what to add to each park. Like I'm not saying that it's not possible because they each can have their own team still. You know, if we're like, okay, we want X amount of parks to get rides this year, there's a lot more to go off, like to choose from. So I worry that it's going to be like, the investments will be probably bigger, but like they will be less frequent.
Here's another big change. Both companies have a very different set of IPs. So Cedar Fair, of course, has Snoopy and the Gang, and Six Flags has the Looney Tunes and DC. How much of that crosses over? In their press release, they said that their mindset is to strengthen and lean into the intellectual properties. But what does that mean? Does that mean that we see the DC characters at the Cedar Fair parks and the Peanuts characters at the Six Flags parks?
Or it could be really beneficial. Like, you never know. Like, maybe they could use it where, like, okay, you keep your IP, you can do DC, but like we want it up to our theming standards. So then we get a really cool DC universe. Like you never know.
Something I'm definitely interested in seeing how it plays out is a lot of the behind the scenes. Like what happens in terms of like park management, for instance. Like,
and just employees in general.
Absolutely. So now that you have all these other parks, you have like a bigger pool of employees to pull from that can all like help each other, but also you might see some big management shifts. So it's like, okay, we really want to now help out this park. Let's pull this employee from a Six Flags park who's in upper management and send them over to a Cedar Fair park that we wouldn't have otherwise.
Well, one thing that I think they could do here is like we mentioned that there are some parks that are like in similar areas. You could, in theory, cross-train employees to work at, you know, let's say Knott's and Magic Mountain. Like if you're short-staffed at one, you send them over to the other and back and forth. I mean, that does beg the question of what will they do as far as safety procedures? Because right now, only one of the two chains uses IROC.
Yeah, so for those who are unfamiliar, so IROC is the International Ride Operator Certification, International Ride Training, and that's something that Six Flags actually used to have. They were actually kind of like where IROC really got started, but they dropped and they now use their own like ride operator training. Cedar Fair adopts IROC, so that's where a lot of the ride operator procedures in place. Like Cedar Fair, again, like we talked about, is definitely a little bit more on the conservative side of things. Like we've seen how Cedar Fair is like, we need to add seat belts to our B&M hyper coasters and our giga coasters, and that's something that factually you don't need that restraint. It isn't there on most other B&M hyper coasters or whatever, but that's something that Cedar Fair is like, well, we want to make sure that that's in place because, you know, you can never be too careful. And so do we see like IROC and some of those like fundamental like state of minds transfer over to the other parks?
Well, I feel like they have to like unify on that. Like they can't have like some of the parks use IROC and some of them use something else. So they have to be all working together. Again, if they want to move anyone between companies, like it can't be like, oh, when I have to learn a whole new like system. It doesn't make any sense.
Something else that I think is going to be interesting to watch is the special events. You know, so the Halloween season is huge with Fright Fest and Halloween Haunt. Scarowinds, Not Scary Farm, and then also contrary, then you have the Christmas season, Holiday in the Park versus Winterfest. Do we see a unification within the branding and the state of mind? If they do, I think they should drop Holiday in the Park. It's 4 words. Winterfest is just a lot more concise, you know?
But I feel like they'd go with Fright Fest over Haunt.
Maybe. I don't know.
King's Dominion Fright Fest.
Oh, man, that's weird. And then likewise, from the entertainment side of things, like, do we see more of a push on live entertainment in the parks, or do we see it really scale back? Like, these are all things that I feel like are big questions for not just the guests, but the park employees who are in those positions.
I feel like there's a lot of kind of crap as far as entertainment. Like, stuff that is just there for the sake of being there, but like there's never a crowd, there's never anyone watching. Whereas you have like Let's Get Wild was great. Like that always had a crowd. Like I feel like doing less but making them all very high quality is like more of a Cedar Fair move, and they should go that direction.
Absolutely. I think when you factor in all of these different aspects of the theme park experience, what the guests expect, what the employees will be receiving, this is just a very interesting time to be alive and watching this all take place. I feel like we haven't really seen something quite like this before. This is the theme park equivalent of when Disney acquired Lucasfilm or Fox, right? I think this is definitely going to be something that we're going to have to watch. I am cautious, a little worried. I don't know if optimistic is the right word for it either, but it's a wait and see scenario, right?
It's just, especially like it's so like hugely a part of our lives. Should this like kind of tank, it's gonna like be really hard for everyone who's involved in the industry. But if it goes really well, it could be like amazing. Like maybe we go to way more ride openings. Maybe there's way more capital investment as far as rides. Like I don't know.
I am thinking about the guest experience. I'm thinking about the park employee experience. And I'm also thinking about the ride manufacturer experience. If you have it really good with one company and now they're all merged together, you could potentially get dropped and now in favor of someone else. Or maybe you just got a lot more work because of it.
Well, they both like B&M. We know that.
Yeah. So
we'll get B&Ms. We know that.
More B&Ms everywhere. We'll wait and see. This is something to watch, and I don't know, man. It's crazy.
I especially want to hear if you're like a park employee who's worked for either or both of these companies, like what you think. Because if you work for Cedar Fair right now, you don't anymore. You work for Six Flags. Like what the heck?
Post all your thoughts down below about this, and we hope that you enjoyed listening to our like breakdown and analysis of this whole situation. And stay tuned for more here at Coaster Studios. We'll see you next time.